Namaste and welcome to Satsang today. Today, I want to discuss something that really made a total huge, it was a revelation actually for my own awakening, and actually began to allow the the mind to quieten down and love to emerge. And I hear it from many people, and I heard it again this morning in a conversation with someone. And it just struck me how much it applied to me also. And this is fundamental to how we're coming to our awakening and how much we're able to live as this infinite reality. There only is one being that is infinite, and it's experiencing itself through 8 billion human forms and an infinite number of other thought forms, and it will never stop experiencing itself in different ways. But when it experiences itself as a human being, it gets all kinds of confused. It begins to have the capacity to discern and evaluate and compare. And of course, all species have that in a very simplistic way. Is this friend or foe? Should I run towards this or away from it? And very much our own fight or flight mechanism is still evident today in the way that we are as human beings. And this discernment mechanism has developed to such a capacity in the human way of thinking that it's begun to function not just for protection of the physical body, but for protection of the psychological body, the mental body, the idea that we have about ourselves. Should I like this person or not like this person? Should I try to make friends with them or avoid them? Are they criticizing me, or am I just imagining? And it's on, isn't it? The mind is constantly in evaluation and comparison through just the way it works. It very basically sorts everything into two categories: that which is good and wanted, helpful for me, and that which is bad or unwanted or unhelpful, or desired and undesired. And whether we realize it or not, we are still doing that even in our awakening journey for quite some time. We might even fit truth into the desired and wanted category, and illusion or the separate sense of self into the not wanted or bad category. And through no fault of its own, mind can't really stop doing that. It takes two things and evaluates, compares and weighs and measures. And we can use this tool for our spiritual discernment, but at some point we have to step away from that, not rejecting it, but stepping away, because it'll probably be fairly obvious at this point that your mind's way of trying to make sure that you're happy and safe and feeling loved and awakening to truth is not really that effective for permanent, stable freedom, joy, peace, and all of that. And that's really because the mind works in duality. He would even compare the separate sense of self with the infinite self. If such a thing was even possible, he really believes there's a separate self and tries to compare it to the infinite self. Just that very comparison is distorting our perception of reality, because the imagined separate self is just a bunch of thoughts and the resulting emotions and the reflection of those stories and emotions and as their experiences in our life. and all that's happening inside the infinite self that we are. So there's nothing to compare to. Mind is a representation of this infinite self. It's a form that has coagulated itself inside or condensed itself from formlessness into form inside the infinite intangibility that you are. And so it's not really that good at navigating reality. And we have thought it was, right? We have thought it had the answers to this. And really, it doesn't actually have all the information. It doesn't have the capacity to actually see anything. It thinks about something. And it thinks about it in terms of comparison and duality. And you can see, if you just kind of watch your thoughts for a while, you can see the mind mechanism going on. Even now, as I'm talking, it might be assessing this information, going, is this useful, valuable? Do I understand it or not? If there's understanding, it might conclude that you're doing a good job. And so am I. If there's lack of understanding rather, and confusion is present, it might be concluding that you're not good enough, you should be able to understand, or that I'm not good enough and I should be able to express it better. But it's always this kind of comparison mechanism, right, that's going on. And again, it can't do anything other than that. So mind is talking about you or me or anyone based on a predetermined set of criteria for what is good and wanted and what is bad and not wanted. So everything that happens to us, our mind is holding it up against these two definitions and labeling it as one or the other, and it never changes that definition, that label. It doesn't have the autonomy to do that changing process on its own, something that you have to do to help it. And the reason I'm saying all this is because I heard this a couple of times over the last few days, and especially again this morning, 2 or 3 times this morning even, people telling me that they feel attacked by the mind or criticized by the mind, or that the thoughts and the judgments are coming at us from the mind's perspective, that mind is critical and harsh towards us. And I remember in my own awakening a time when that seemed so true. It seemed that I would never be free of my mind. I couldn't even imagine a time when it would be quiet, or even say anything positive, actually, anything other than hateful or hurtful of myself. And there was something that shifted that was fundamental to allowing the mind to turn towards more loving thoughts and more kind, accepting thoughts. It was clear that it could not do it as things were. And it was this one idea that I was really subscribing to, that when I began to see it wasn't true, everything changed. And it is this, that the mind, or the sense that we have that the mind is attacking me, that I'm in a battle with my mind for supremacy, that there's a tug of war going on with attention for I either listen to the mind or I listen to my real nature, my silent self. And that mind is being utterly critical of me, and because of that, I'm pushing it away. I'm feeling resistance to it. And somehow we've come to view awakening as this battle, this last stand, this final showdown, where finally, somehow, some way, through some spiritual practice, I'm going to win this battle. We might even imagine that's what awakened beings had done. And I know I had that sense. I was always looking for the one the one thing they'd done, the shortcut that allowed them to finally sneak up behind the mind and, whack, and it was all done. But it never happened. In fact, it got worse. And the self-hatred thoughts were pretty constant, as I'm sure a lot of people could imagine and have experienced. And so finally, I realized, what if I'm actually not at war with my mind? What if I'm watching it attack itself? And I don't want to get into, I've had people talk to me about ego and super ego and, this, that, and the other, and 27 layers of this egoic sense of self. And I really don't want to get into that because it just made it more complicated and divided to me. But it was clear that there was two parts of my mind, a bunch of ideas, thoughts. So it's not an alive entity, the mind, it's a collection of thoughts. Thoughts about who it thought I am and where it thought I was at in my awakening. And then the other bunch of thoughts were where it thought I should be. So where mind thinks I am and where it thinks I should be. And these were very different collections of thoughts, very different frequency. And because of that, there was a lot of friction between. So this group of thoughts is talking to this group of thoughts. And then this group of thoughts is telling this group of thoughts what to do. And the mind is convinced it's talking to me. As I started to experience who I actually am, it became clear that it's talking in me and not to me. It's not talking to me. And this is why its advice had been largely negative, because it had kept on trying to have this conversation, not knowing it was talking to itself and that it was disconnected from reality. Thoughts talking about thoughts has nothing to do with actual reality, through no fault of its own. Mind was developed from a very simplistic mechanism that was meant to make a quick judgment of whether to run away from something or towards it, or to try to eat it or mate with it in a very simplistic level. And somehow it's been given the job of running the whole office. And it's doing the best it can, thinking it's actually able to perceive the whole office. It's sat in one little desk in a corner, and it's sending out memos all the time, and constantly trying to match its ideas up with what it thinks is happening. And all of this is only meant to elicit compassion for the mind. It's chasing its own tail, and it has no idea it's chasing its own tail. It thinks it's talking to you, the infinite self. It thinks that you are in a process of awakening instead of already being that infinite spaciousness, consciousness, presence in which it's arising. It's caught in that trap. And it's doing its best because it's been instructed, you need to solve all of my problems, even this greatest problem of awakening. How do I awaken? Somehow we've, as a species, we've decided on some level that the mind has the answers that we're looking for. And what if it never did? And what if it doesn't know that? What if it keeps on trying and trying and trying? And when it can't seem to succeed, it starts to turn inward on itself. It can't really give up because it's sure that it's on the right track, and it's sure that it's perceiving reality. But it just ends up turning inwards and attacking itself. It thinks it's attacking you, but it's actually attacking itself. You are watching this from your real place, your real being that is unaffected. You're watching the mind do its thing. When I really sat with this and looked at it again, I began to really how I felt about the mind shifted. Even that's not true. This part that was attacking itself began to just stop a little bit. I was still just watching. What it felt like experientially was something softened, and I stopped imagining that I was at war with it. It was resisting its own self, trying to tear itself apart and put itself back together again and again and again. And it would keep on doing that forever if we never realized. And the great love that you are, the great acceptance that you already are, that which is aware of all phenomena, whether the mind would label them positive, negative, good, evil, all of it. Loving thoughts and hateful thoughts. The self that you are is love, and it is loving all of this right now. So there was a huge shift, slowly at first, but it began to really gather momentum. And it was compassion. I never knew that I was capable of such compassion until I saw this loop, and that it was desperately trying to fulfill my expectations of it, imagining that it could fulfill them, solve the problems. And then to see even clearer, those problems don't actually really exist in reality. Imagine problems trying to be solved by an imagined entity that thinks it is able to perceive reality. No wonder it hasn't really worked out that well, right? And is it your mind's fault? Is it anyone's fault? Or is it just an outcome of the capacity to discern and to evaluate deepening? Is it just something that developed with our brains as the complexity of our human brains took shape? And maybe it's good for worldly situations. I'd like this job better than this one, and I'd like this restaurant tonight rather than, or I'd like to stay home rather than go out. I like tea rather than coffee, and on it goes. But in terms of awakening, it's the one thing it can never really have any objective, no pun intended, opinion of. It can't see the forest. It's looking at one tree only, and it's totally focused on one tree, and it's lost, not even lost sight of the forest it can't see. It's looking at one tree in the forest, trying to pick which one it is. It's this one. And it has no capacity to encompass the larger aspect of who you really are. This, for me, there's such compassion developed and a real love for the mind and how it has always tried to fulfill what I thought I needed and wanted. Even this greatest desire of all, to recognize who I really am and to live like that. And somehow with me seeing that it's at war with itself and not that I'm at war with it, and watching this fragmented little bit of mind try to fix itself. Somehow with that seeing that I was already just watching, there was such a love that emerged for the mind, a recognition that it is doing the best it can. And no wonder it's kind of got a little tangled up and bitter and twisted, because it's trying to achieve this thing that it doesn't know it can't do. And in that there was a softening. I began to experience the power of real, undivided, non-dual love. That whichever way a phenomenon is appearing and arising, it is loved because of its existence. Just as we all are. That I don't even need my mind to solve any problems for me to lovingly accept it's here. And in this rich understanding that began to sprout out of the heart, there was a capacity to love the mind's goalpost that it would set for me. You know, this is where you need to be. You're here right now and you need to be over here. And then as soon as you reach over here, it moves them again, right? It moves the goalposts again. And mine became more like a friend because I wasn't pushing against it, and it wasn't pushing against itself. What if one thought could splinter the entire mind? Like distort its capacity completely to perceive reality. One thought that I am this body only, I am this one tree in the forest. It has the capacity then to fracture its whole experience. How could we ever see anything clearly when we think we are just one tiny object in a vast universe? And nothing could be further from the truth, right? Nothing could be more opposite than what's actually true. You are the universe and the source of it. And I began to experience my mind as being just a little misguided or uninformed or limited. Asking the mind to solve my problems and make sure I'm good enough and all of that. It's just like asking the software on my computer to run my life. It's just a predetermined set of rules, isn't it? A program, very much like the mind. So if these words are penetrating something inside, you can just decide today to try to make friends with your mind. Understanding that it's not at war with you. It's at war with itself. It can't even see. The mind is just a bunch of thoughts. So it can't see that you are not your mind. You can see that. You can see that you're aware of thoughts. But the mind can't see that. It's not sentient of its own. You can see, wow, I'm before thoughts, I'm aware of them, and I'm still here when they go. And then mind might parrot that back to us. I am aware of thoughts, it says. But it's not an intelligent conclusion from mind, is it? It's an outpouring of the wisdom of the self. It couldn't do that on its own, the mind. So two ideas became, or realizations became pivotal. The recognition, I'm not my mind. It's a tool that's arising inside me. Secondly, that my mind is always going to think it's me. It can't see what, number one, it can't see that it's a vehicle or a tool I'm using. It thinks it's me. Your mind thinks it's you. That's why something always listens to it, right? Something inside goes, yeah, you know, when it's critical, it kind of deflates something inside. And when it says nice things, well, yeah, it kind of get puffed up and elevated for a little while. And you're watching both of those. You're watching as awareness, both of those. And there are a lot of spiritual teachings that have this quite negative view of the mind or the ego as being the root of all evil, even, and the source of every struggle in our life. And then we develop this spiritual culture in non-dual circles, especially, that the mind is something to be eliminated or destroyed or crushed or totally rejected. And that's only the perspective coming from inside the mind or the ego. Only the ego or the mind, using those words synonymously, would want to destroy itself. You are the creator of all forms, including the mind, and you are so in love with everything that you perceive. Such love that you are able to let it arise exactly as it is with no capacity or desire to change it. You love so freely that you let things arise exactly as they arise. And you don't have it within you to say that should not be how it is. The mind says that. You don't have any capacity to say should or shouldn't about anything. It's all happening in the mind. You are celebrating every form, whether it's a thought, a tree, a human body, an amoeba, speck of dust, a black hole, all of it. So can you step back? Will you step back from feeling that you are at war with mind and that you have to eliminate it? What if the exact opposite is needed? What if you begin to realize that you are that love that it's so desperately drawn to and needs? You are the warm fire and the hot cocoa, and it's freezing. It's freezing to death, right? And it just wants to come near to you, the self. It just wants loving understanding of itself. And as much as it wants to come close to you, it's also terrified of you because it thinks you are going to destroy it. It thinks you're going to crush it, annihilate it. And when I began to realize this, there was such compassion that began to emerge from mind as just being very, very limited, very well, the very fact that it works in duality means it cannot know anything about you, that which is one. And as much as it would like to see truth, it can't. So what will you give to mind? When you let go of this idea that it's talking to you, immediately compassion develops. Immediately. Like a small child that's lost in a crowd and is really fretting and panicking. You take it by the hand and try to find their parents and try to make them feel better. Or an animal that's lost or trapped. You would do the same, right? So why treat our mind that way, unkindly? Well, you never have. You never have. It's the mind doing it to itself. And when you realize this, instantly you forgive yourself for everything you think you've ever done and everyone you've ever judged, apparently judged, because you never did. Not only is this freedom for the mind, it is total self-acceptance for you and a deep recognition of who you actually are and what that means. You are the sun that shines on everything equally. So freely do you give your loving compassion and attention that you allow any form to arise, take any shape, and you don't have the capacity to say no, or the desire. Infinite creation means infinite, right? Not the ones that suit the mind's definition of good. So how does this impact you as you're listening? What does it make you feel for the mind that perhaps you hadn't noticed or felt before? What if it's a tour guide for reality and it's working from the wrong map? Or a GPS that doesn't know where you're starting from or heading to. It just keeps telling you to continue. Peace, joy, contentment, clarity, and wisdom are all available in this moment when you embrace this. Why be so sure mind is fighting with you? Has that conclusion ever really worked out for us? What if it's not true? What if it's just accepted by all human beings, but has never actually been the case? It thinks it's talking to you, but what if it's actually talking to itself? Immediately then, there's some kind of distance, not distance as in hatred or aversion, but distance as in capacity to just observe it from a more loving perspective. And something just stops if you let it. Your insight and your clarity is the infinite self, that it's attacking itself. It allows a little bit of that wisdom to be infused into the mind. And mind might finally be able to have this thought. I remember this thought arising for the first time. I don't need to fix anything. And it was from the self, the infinite self. There's nothing for me to fix. But it was also from the mind too. The mind was like, it's not my job to have to sort all of this out. Somehow I thought it was. And there was such peace. Did you know you can actually love your mind into dissolution? Not annihilating it, but just dissolving it into a more fluid thing that's actually a useful vehicle, not this very rigid structure of thoughts. You know, that this is about this and this is what I think about this, and I'm sure this is true, and just more fluid and a dissolution of the rigidity of the way we think is freedom. And it's available right now if you can fall in love with your mind. If I said that at the beginning of the satsang, perhaps we might have been sure that it was just not possible. But maybe now you might feel differently. Mind is just a software program that thinks it's an intelligent being. Perhaps not the best analogy now, because some of these software programs are more intelligent than I am. But you get the idea. So I'd like to invite you to fall in love with your mind. Love it into dissolution. So I have one question here that's been sent in. I will read that out, and I'd like to invite, if you want to raise your hand here, up to 4 questions here today. 4 questions here today. Feel free to raise your hand. This says, Dear Helen, 28 years ago, my wife gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl. They are by far the most important thing in my life. When they were born, I felt incredibly blessed by God because we were having trouble conceiving and had been trying for about 3 years. However, my joy turned to terror as I felt something terrible was going to happen to my babies. That fear is still with me today, 28 years later. This fear has had an enormous impact on my life in terms of depression, anxiety, PTSD, etc., and has affected my ability to work. Their mother and I separated in 2005, and I have tried to be the best dad possible. But I cannot let go of this fear that they will not be okay. And fear I have passed on a generational curse to them from my birth family, were abusive to me. I have said many prayers and meditated and seen many mental health professionals over the years, but they have not helped much. How can I help my kids be okay? I greatly appreciate you and what you do. Many thanks and blessings. You know, such a honest, heartfelt, brave sharing is obviously coming from a parent who has the deepest and purest intentions and has already transcended this generational curse, even before you were to conceive those twins. There is no way that your DNA could have contained that when you passed it along. Just no way. And I'm not saying that lightly. I'm saying our incarnation here is for the recognition of the love that we are. And to understand why our parents may be, of course, not to agree with it, but to understand how most people are letting their mind run the show completely and unaware that they're doing that, actually, and how these kind of behaviors result in human beings, whilst also simultaneously embracing the desire to be better than that, to be better in our actions and our capacity to love. There is no way that you could make such a sincere prayer. You could have written about anything. How can I make more money? How can I deepen my awakening? How can I find a new romantic relationship as my one has ended? Here you are asking about your children. That says something, right? Every parent I speak to on the path, their sense of unworthiness, as it was for me, is running the show. Too convinced how we're not good enough parents, and not convinced enough that we might already be doing the best we can. So, having said all of that, I want to clearly state that you have not passed this along to your children. I just want to be really clear in that. There is no way you could have done. Love transmutes everything and even changes the DNA, the sperm and the egg. Even if you had, which you haven't, passed this along, your recognition of who you really are would also transmute that in them. Every family around every awakened being is very blessed because they will be affected by the awakened being's inability to see the human beings around them in their family as separate to them. And therefore, their realization is, what's the best word? Transferred or imbued upon or absorbed by those other bodies, because the awakened being knows they're not separate. Even if that being thinks they're separate and doesn't even realize their parent is awakened or awakening. And this is coming from someone who's very far along the path, very far along. I don't know who sent it in, but it's very clear from what you've written. So I would just like to say that even if you had passed something along, your recognition of who you are has the capacity to cancel out anything that's going on in your relatives. And that's true for everyone here on this satsang and everyone here in this lifetime who's trying to awaken. Your realization of who you are. When I realized who I am and began to live like that, it wasn't just this body, right? It wasn't happening in a body. The effect of that seeing was happening in a particular body, but the seeing itself was everywhere. The everywhereness recognizing the everywhereness. How could that not affect everyone around you? How could that not? And the last thing I want to say about this, because it's really, really important, is when your twins were born all those years ago, this fear, terror, depression, anxiety, PTSD, it's not about your twins, although mind will be sure it is. What happens is sometimes when children are born, or when we meet our soulmate, or get married, or start a new job, or have a challenge with our friend, the sense of division is intensified. It was latent within us, dormant, the sense of being a separate being. So your twins are there, you're looking at them as babies, and suddenly you really feel separate to them, and a great responsibility and a burden comes upon us as parents to care for these beings that we feel responsible for. And of course, we do that, but it really enhances what we're suffering from is not the idea that something is going to happen to your children. those thoughts that something bad is going to happen and I can't stop it are a symptom of believing yourself to be separate to them. If you can see that you're not separate to them, then you can, you just literally won't be able to have thoughts about bad things happening to them. Because whatever you've realized for you is also for them too. You'll realize that you're already free. You'll see they're already free. And recognition of who they are also is going to radically shift your thought process. So it's a division that reflects this depression and fear and hopelessness because you feel that they're separate to you. There's nothing you can do to protect them, really. Once their physical bodies get big enough, there's really nothing. They go their own way in their own lives. There's nothing you can do. But there's something you can be. You can be that indivisible self consciously because you already are. They are you. Of course, they're your children too. Their bodies are associated with, parents. But ultimately, there's no child, there's no parent. There's just the infinite self playing and using relationships to experience and deepen its own capacity for love. So that's the cause of the suffering, and that's something you can change. The hopelessness and the depression is because you feel there's just no way out of this. But what if you're not suffering for the reason you think you are? What if the root cause of this is the sense that you're separate to them, which was always in there? We've unknowingly felt separate to everyone around us, that they're different people. What if that is just highlighted when your babies were born? It certainly was for me. My own depression largely stemmed from my sense of, it was my awakening happening, but my unworthiness as a parent, and my total inability to be what they needed me to be, or so I thought, or so the mind thought. So there's some really good news in this answer, right? That without realizing it, you're automatically protecting them and blessing them even. And children born to awakened parents, even before they're awakened, even those destined to wake up in this lifetime, which is all of us, they're also on the path too, if they realize it or not, to some degree. Why would they be drawn into a household where awakening is going to be happening? So I hope that gives you comfort. But mostly just to see, you can't pass this along. You could not. You did not. That's the purpose of awakening in this lifetime, is to cancel out all the generational karma. All the patterns nullified. Not just for the body mind that attends satsang, but for all of them around. And that's a blessing. That's the best parent you could be right now. I could go on for a long time because this is the last part of my path, but I'll stop there. And we'll go to Anamika. Hi.
I think go on. I'm really touched by what you just said. And also amazing when you said it's time to hands up. And I was thinking, I have a question around my grandson. And then this came up. So I will go on because you answered already a lot. When my oldest grandson is 6 years, who's amazing. They are. He has a kind of what we label as too much energy. He doesn't stop talking all the time. He explains everything constantly, so he's constantly asking for approval. And my daughter, she asked me yesterday, Mom, I just don't know what to do anymore. I can't do it anymore. So I just talked a little bit about all this, and that if she would look into herself, and I am working on, I'm not good enough. Do I really need approval from outside? And I said to her, maybe you can do it along with, because it's all something of us. If we change it, something can change with us. So that's it. That, and maybe I already answered again.
It's no coincidence, right? It's perfect oneness that that question came up while you were waiting to speak, and to see that your own child's sense of unworthiness about being a parent even is mirroring a mirror of our own sense of unworthiness that we're transcending, and so they recognize that the best thing you can do is to remember that you're not separate to any of them, that what you're realizing and the work you're doing will begin to benefit more and more bodies. And I'm sure you've seen that, some signs of that already, but just to recognize that and how important that is, because we take some time out for satsang or whatever, and we think, oh, it's selfish to meditate, I should be doing something for them with the time, or it's selfish to attend satsang and to take time for myself. But what if it's the opposite, right? When you start to realize like this, it's necessary. In fact, it's vital. And I can't think of a better example to set than this for your own children and your grandchildren. That whatever challenges happen, whatever challenges come up for all of you, it can be an opportunity to allow love to expand rather than an opportunity to judge ourselves. It's certainly been the turnaround in my own parenting, and I haven't quite got to grandkids yet, but you can give me some tips when I get there. You'll have it all figured out by then, I'm sure. Yeah. Just to know that you're doing the best that you can for them, right? And how differently you might have handled this a few months ago than you are doing now. You might have gone into some unworthiness yourself and then felt very disempowered and unable to say anything that helped. And it's a beautiful phase. There's a lot of attention has to go on one body mind as you're doing a lot of inquiry and meditation and contemplation. But then after it's got a little firm seat inside the truth, it starts to want to work through all of your relationships. You'll see it, right? You'll feel it. It's like, let's transform this into unconditional love, where everyone around you can't judge themselves either, even just for a little while. It's so nice. Have you noticed that starting already? Good. Thank you for sharing. Love you so much. Wonderful. Okay. Pauline?
Hello, Helen.
Hi.
It was really such a beautiful permission to love that poor little mind that's trying so hard to make sense of everything. And it just came, of course, just perfectly that these last few days I've been very much aware that it doesn't understand what's going on, and you encapsulated it and given it to me, and I just wanted to I've had this image you've said before, tell it to go take a coffee break, but I really felt this, it wanted just to be loved, as he said. So that came, and it's like, there isn't anything that I want, it sounds personally, but there's nothing I want to exclude from being able to love. And now that's there too, and that's I guess that's the biggest thing of all, because that's the one that raises all the objections in the first place. because that's its, it thought it was its job.
Yeah.
And then your answer to the email, that was just so perfect. When my daughter was born, I was such a happy pregnant woman. At last I knew what my role was. Oh, I've never known who I was. And now, okay, I'm a mom, you know. And then she was born, and I looked into her eyes, and it was like she was looking at me to say, who are you? And afterwards I thought, no, it was me thinking, who are you? It's like the separation would just kind of, it had manifested, it seemed, in physical form. And as you said, the children bring everything into focus, like guilt. My God, it was just overwhelming. So everything you say is always about finding a loving way to approach it. And I just cannot thank you enough for that. You crystallized so much for me. It's, you know, it's been a very long ongoing process, but everything that you say just is a reassurance, you're doing fine, don't criticize yourself. You know, it's always this allowing you to relax and let things just be and flow, and then the love is there, and then it can actually, I guess I'm just so grateful. Really. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I guess I have to be grateful to me for allowing you
Absolutely.
into my life.
I am not outside of you. I am you talking to you.
So thank you, and have a wonderful trip and a wonderful time, and help all those other lovely people that you are going to.
Thank you so much. I might look calm right now, but my suitcase is a little bit of a mess, so you know, I'll get to that at some point.
Maybe your mind will help.
You know, I've always been, it's one thing I used to really suffer from, actually. I've always been a last minute packer. And I used to criticize myself for that, right? Back in the day. I should do it sooner and be more organized. When I did it sooner, I would just take it all out again and second guess myself. And now I go away on Saturday and the packing's probably going to get done tomorrow and I'll just watch it, but with no stress. And if I get there and something's missing, so what? You know, we'll figure it out. It's so nice not to be able to judge myself on that. So nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. Really appreciate it. Thank you. Wonderful. Okay, so we will leave it there for today. As we just alluded to, we'll be in the US. I'll be in the US for about a month. And a couple of retreats going on. One's already closed for booking, one hasn't, the end of June. So in New Jersey. So if you fancy joining us, you're more than welcome. But if you can't, and I'm saying this because there's so many retreats with different teachers I wanted to attend but never could for various reasons, lack of money and for small children. If you can't attend, then you can still get the same benefit. If you don't believe you're separate to me, if you're willing to entertain the fact that you are me, why can't you feel everything that's coming out of that retreat? And we've seen this in our community, in our graduate program community. We've seen people saying that are having, across the other side of the world, they're having profound insights and experiences. And even able to sense when somebody actually in the physical retreat has had a huge breakthrough. So please, please don't believe in any disconnection there. Everything that's available in that retreat is available right now for you. I am you, you are me. So there's just the one of us here. So thank you. Namaste.